David Peters asks this question, or I think makes a comment. Our new young read non-check writing treasurer has been exploring our options beyond our current online giving, and she discovered that our church software offers online giving that automatically is added into our contribution portion of the software. It's a good tip to check whatever church management software you use to find out if there is an online giving opportunity. Angie, do you know anything about that in what you're doing?
We aren't using our software to do that.
Okay, great. What is the, go ahead.
I was just saying, I was working with a church the other day. Actually, it's the one in Providence. They uses ACS technology, and ACS has an online giving option in their church software.
So the question is raised about the capability to swipe credit cards at fundraisers and the thrift shop as an example. One of the things that Nancy Robbins is concerned about is the security involved with doing so. Any thoughts about the swipe machine when we are able to actually swipe machines in buildings? Angie, go ahead.
We have used that at our fundraiser. We usually have a craft fair every year, and one of our fundraisers as a part of that is selling lobster rolls. And you know, my first year, we ran out of dollars to buy lobster rolls. And so it is great to give people an option to pay by credit card. A lot of people don't carry cash on them, and they will purchase more if they can purchase. And we got one of those squares, like you just plug it into your phone and you can swipe on anybody's phone to be set up with the software. We did it with Boy Scouts when we were selling popcorn. It's very easy to use.
So what about GoFundMe to raise funds for the church? Lee?
So I prefer not to use GoFundMe because of the fees. I think for nonprofits, you still have to pay the fees associated with payment processing, which I think is 2.2%. You can ask your donors to cover that fee and add it on to their donation, but I haven't had great feedback during my workshops. People have used GoFundMe, said they probably would not use it again. Mary?
I would echo that and say I'm aware of a couple of churches in my region who've tried GoFundMe over the years and have not had great success with it. It's not been a platform that really generated excitement about giving to the church. It's really great for one-off fundraisers to cover someone's expenses for their medical bills or something like that. That's a place where it tends to be very effective. But when it comes to ongoing fundraising for the church's operational expenses, it's just not engaging enough to make people want to give.
So I don't know the answer to this, but I'm sure my esteemed panel may. I didn't say you will, but you may. Does PayPal require you to have an individual Social Security number on file for the account? Do we know the answer to that?
My understanding from many years ago, having signed up for a nonprofit, was that there is a way to use a nonprofit's employer ID number instead of a Social Security number, but it's a little more complicated, but that's not a reason not to do it.
And Andy Roberts points out that Breeze does have, I think, online giving and has texting capability. So there's a shout out for the Breeze as a possibility to explore for online. We got some questions earlier about planned giving. And we wanted to spend a little time. We've been talking a little bit more technically about kind of what are the online, and I'm really happy to see all the questions about that. And we will try to resource those and maybe look at our resources so we can try to help you in that decision-making process if you haven't made it yet. But we have had some questions about planned giving. Should we be thinking about doing planned giving? Yeah, Angie.
Can I just say one thing before we move to planned giving?
Sure,
around
of course. Yeah.
Online giving? I just want to lift up, many of you might be aware that there is an ongoing scam where people are impersonating pastors and asking for eBay gift cards or other kinds of gift cards. And I think as we publicize these online giving options, it's really important that we communicate with our congregations that your pastor is never going to ask you to buy a gift card or send you a PIN number over email. And so I just think to do that education piece while we're talking about online giving options is really important.
Thanks for that, Angie. And I just wanted to give a shout out to David Corkum, who says the application process on Facebook is painful. It took almost 6 weeks. I've got a better story that it's taken more than 5 months for us to get one for the Southern New England Conference. So it does take time. So if you're thinking about Facebook, you may want to start getting your application in now. And there's a backlog, I think, of that due to the pandemic. Charlie's going to talk a little bit about planned giving because we haven't touched on that topic yet, and we did get a previous question asked about that. So Charlie, why don't you share a little bit about planned giving as a way to generate wealth and generosity towards churches?
Sure, and I could fill up an entire hour or more about this, so I'm going to be very high level. First, there's never a bad time to be doing planned giving work and planned giving cultivation. So you shouldn't feel like you need to have things on hold. However, asking people to make a planned gift by letter or by broadcast, either in person or virtually, is not particularly effective. The most effective way to ask for planned gifts is to sit down with an individual or a couple in person together and make an ask, usually with 2 people. Doing that, and we can coach. You can get coached in how to do this, and it actually is a pretty joyful experience to engage people in this way. And this may not be the right moment for face-to-face asks in some cases. Nevertheless, there's plenty of work you could still be doing in preparation to cultivate planned gifts. You should have a case statement. You should have something that says to people, this is why you should make a planned gift to our church. Don't assume that people know. And if you take this task seriously, it is difficult and challenging, but once you complete the task, you'll be much better equipped to have these face-to-face meetings and to ask more effectively. You can also work on having some policies and rules in place for investing and spending and how you're going to manage the money, how you're going to recognize people. And you can be looking at all of the resources that are available online from multiple sources about planned giving. This is an area that's very well covered. There is not magic when it comes to planned giving. And people can help you get ready to do this. So look for resources. I hope that we will have one of our own workshops or webinars sometime in the next couple of months on the planned giving topic, so you can look for that. But that's a very high-level overview of some planned giving issues. It's a tremendous opportunity because something in excess of $1 trillion in wealth is going to pass from the baby boomer generation to the next generation. And the good news is churches get about 1/3 of people's charitable giving when they're alive, but we're only getting about 10% of their charitable giving when they die. And that's because other organizations are much better at cultivating planned gifts than we are.
So we did not mean to shut down the questions. So if you have some more questions about the finances during this time, we'd welcome them. This is that awkward silence waiting for someone to type a question.
I'll just jump in here and add a little bit to what Charlie said. I was in a meeting a few weeks ago where one of the members of this board that I'm on started talking about his plans for his giving in his will to this organization in this meeting of our trustees. And it was an incredibly powerful moment. And even via Zoom, even not knowing one another terribly well, and having this sort of intimate, personal testimony that this guy was saying, well, here's how my husband and I have decided to allocate our giving, and we've decided that a percentage of it is going to go to this organization and a percentage of it is going to go to that organization, and we want to make sure to leave some for our kids and our nieces and nephews. And we've decided that this is an organization that's important to us, and we've left a significant gift in our will. And this is not someone who would have who was planning to die anytime soon, but he was planning for his future and his financial future and his kids' financial future and his spouse's financial future. And just hearing the decision-making process that they went through to figure out what was important to them. You spend money on the things that you value. You give money to the organizations that you value. And hearing his testimony to say, this is a place that has changed our lives, and we want to make sure that it's able to do that for others, and here's how we've planned for that, was very powerful and very compelling. And it didn't feel icky. It didn't feel like a sales pitch. It didn't feel like, oh, I don't want to know this much about this person's personal life. It felt like an invitation and like a very beautiful gift that he was giving us to equip us to think about what kind of legacy we might want to leave. So I share this story to say, don't be afraid to talk about your plans. Don't be afraid to ask someone to give a testimony about what their plans are. If you know that someone has planned to leave money to your church in their will, you might invite them to be one of the people who goes with you to ask other people. It's a real gift to your church to invite this conversation.
You really, when you visit people to ask for gifts, the dream setup is a person who has made a planned gift that can testify, and the pastor, because they're in a trusting relationship and represent the church, and they can go and work together to make the ask. But fundamental to it is the asker saying, I have already made a gift. I feel good about it. I want to invite you to join with me in the joy of supporting this organization in this way.
And let me add on to that, because you're both talking also about something that is incredibly crucial. And for those who join into the first Bible and the book study that we do, and they read the first three chapters of Christopher's book, they'll find out why this is so important. Mary, you just mentioned it. It's that the organization, the institution changed their lives. People are giving to organizations that are changing people's lives. And that's one of the things that's really emerging out of this pandemic, is how our churches are focusing on mission and serving people and serving communities. There's the old phrase that money follows mission, and that's about changing lives. And when you go in to see what organizations are receiving large gifts in terms of planned giving, it's because the people who are giving have experienced the change in their own lives and want to see that institute or that organization go on to change even more people's lives. So it's linking a mission and changing lives and giving and asking. And so you're not just asking for yourself or for your church, you're also asking for, on behalf of Jesus, and to be able to change more people's lives and continue the mission of the organization. So it's the switch from trying to fund the building and all of the stuff that goes on to funding the mission of God and the mission of love and justice in the world today.
And Angie, you were trying to get in on that.
Well, I was just going to share that I think now is a good time to bring this up. My husband and I, we reviewed our 5 wishes at the start of the pandemic. I think people are thinking about their life and their death, and we did that because I wanted to share with the congregation. And I think that that's a perfect lead-in as we're thinking about matters of life and death. How we want to remember the organizations that are important to us, especially the church. And the other thing that I was going to share around planned giving is, I think that when you begin to talk about stewardship, it can lead to people making gifts. We are doing a capital campaign at our church, and there have been a number of people who haven't been able to make as significant of a gift as they wish, but they have written us into their will. I know at least 4 people who've done that. And so when you start to talk about generosity in one way, it can lead into other ways that people are remembering the church in their wills.
Great. Karen Halleck is giving a shout out to a webinar that Michael Piazza offered at Hartford Seminary. We will try to check, and Tiffany, who is, by the way, doing a great job behind the scenes for this webinar. Shout out to Tiffany Vale and all the work that she does. We will try to check to see if that webinar is something that's recorded so that we can send that link out to you. The Strengthen the Church offering, Brian Lapis asks a question about any tips on administering the Strengthen the Church offering. We have sent out materials. This is one of the all church offerings of the United Church of Christ. In the Southern New England Conference, we have done some new things with it, and it will go to outdoor ministries and faith formation ministries. And there's lots of social media buzz about the Strengthen the Church offering. How can a church make a donation to that? They can certainly give online through the conference website, and they can do the old-fashioned thing of mailing a check to one of our satellite offices, either in Framingham or in Hartford.
You could put it in your church newsletter if you're sending out a paper newsletter, if you're missing the opportunity of putting it in bulletins.
So any tips on inviting the congregation during an online service? What other ways have your congregants been given the opportunity to give, at least in online worship? Any thoughts on that? Some of us just go from one online worship on Sunday morning to another. So we've seen we've been able to worship in many of our churches in ways that we never would have had the ability to do so. So it's really important. I'll take a crack at that and let others respond. It's really important that pastors talk about making a gift to the church as part of the online worship. Just as you wouldn't probably leave that out if you were worshiping within a structure, it's really important to give people the opportunity to remind them every single time. If you can get really fancy and click this link in to give directly to your website or however you're doing online donations, that's a great thing. But I think talking about it, encouraging it, I think that's a part of what can be done. Do not leave out the ask for supporting the mission and ministry of the local congregation. Don't think people just are going to do that without you asking for it. We've got a question here, Charlie. This may be up your alley on PPP. My church did receive the PPP for salaries. I'm trying to find out when I file my 941 for taxes, can I use PPP money for that also? And maybe that's David or Charlie. David's got tax accounting background.
That's a Charlie question. He's been tracking the PPP.
Okay, Charlie.
My understanding is no, that you don't use the PPP loan proceeds for paying taxes, but please go to our website and look at the detailed instructions that are available for the application, use of proceeds, and loan forgiveness to get that verified.
So while you're still talking, Charlie, Susan Chapin says, did she hear you say that fear over the future consequences that would result from drawing down a tenuous endowment fund that's lost value over the months would be a valid reason to accept money from the PPP, even if giving has not dropped?
The question that you have to ask yourself is, has the current economic situation created enough uncertainty about your operational capability to necessitate a loan? So it does not mean that your income has immediately plummeted It can mean that you anticipate financial distress because of lost rental income, lost fundraising, that maybe your giving is sustained in the short run by people accelerating their pledges, and that will be, offset later on in the year. So you've got uncertainty about your future revenue. And what I said is that the existence of unrestricted funds functioning as endowment that theoretically you could use does not disqualify you from certifying that these are necessary funds. I think you asked, is it just a question of timing because markets are down, although they've rebounded substantially, enough of a reason? And I think you have to look at the entirety of the picture and not just one data point. You're looking at a mosaic, not at mosaic tiles when you make these answer these discernment questions.
Excellent. Has anyone done anything? Sorry?
Oh, I was going to say, if they want to know anything more about some of the other opportunities through the CARES Act, in case they didn't take the PPP, they have other economic relief that they can get, like the employee retention program. They can defer their employer share of payroll taxes. They can defer all of those things. So there are a lot of other things that churches can avail themselves of in addition to or besides the PPP program, and they should look into some of those things.
Great. And this will be our last question. And wow, the hour has just flown by with great questions and we hope helpful content. Has anyone done anything creative to recover funds lost from the weekly plate? It would seem like this could be a fun for them to do a Facebook campaign. We would say yes. Doing fun things is really okay. And thinking of creative ways to raise funds, I know Lee would completely support that. And we want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. This is the second time we've come together this way, and by the response of all of you and by this many people sitting together on a Thursday night in May, I think we'll do this again. We're having a lot of fun. So I'm going to ask our panelists to just give a few closing remarks, and then Mary will close out our time together with a final prayer. So let's go to David first. David, any closing thoughts?
You would ask the big introvert to go first. This is
Go
not.
ahead, David, you can do it.
I guess my closing statement would be to not only think when you're doing online worship that you're directing your worship to your own people. Online worship gives you a platform for bringing the love and justice of your congregation of Jesus also to the outside world. Online giving then enables other people to also support that mission. We've received several comments from churches that have received funds from the community that they're in because of the mission work that they're doing, because of the good work that they're doing, and online giving gives them that opportunity to do so. So y'all are doing a great job out there as far as doing the mission work and bringing the love and justice of Jesus. Keep doing it.
Great. Lee.
So I would just say communication is key right now, especially communications with your donors. It's true some donors are going to pull back on their giving for the time being, but I promise you that there will be others who will step up during this time of need. So check in with your donors, see how they're doing, let them know that you're there and thinking of them, and share your resources. Thank your donors for any gifts you're receiving now or for their longstanding support, and most importantly, continue your fundraising and remember to ask.
Thank you, Lee. Angie.
Don't be afraid to invite people into generosity. Many people are affected in negative ways, but many people have funds that are freed up in this time because they're not going out to dinner or they don't have childcare costs. So people may have more money to share at this time, and don't be afraid to invite them into generosity because it will make a difference for you and it will make a difference for them.
Thanks, Angie. Charlie?
If you have not applied for a Paycheck Protection Program loan, it is not too late. Many of our churches have done so, and many of them are testifying that it has eased their short-term concerns, and that is a valuable bridge into the future, because we know we're not returning to whatever was normal before. We're not going back to that. We're moving forward into a different future.
Thanks, Charlie. And Mary.
Sign up for the book club. Pick up your copy of Not Your Parents' Offering Plate. It's available on Kindle and through a variety of local bookstores near you. And we do recommend that you support local business. And be ready for our first gathering on June 8th. It's going to be a time of learning and fellowship and all sorts of wonderful things. And now, friends, I would invite you to join me in a final prayer. We anticipate your generosity, Holy One. And in this time of uncertainty, we know that we can count on you. So help us to see your abundance. Help us to invite your transformation. Help us to make disciples who seek to be as generous as you are. And use your church to heal your ailing world. Through Christ who strengthens us. Amen.
Amen. So thank you, panel, for your contributions tonight. We thank the participants for coming and for your good questions. If you have other questions that we haven't answered, you can turn to one of us and ask us through email, and we will probably do this. We will do this again because it's just so much fun to talk about generosity, resources, and equipping the ministry of Christ's church. So be safe, be well. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.